Welcome to Magical Curiosities. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a realistic looking unicorn horn out of clay. Let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do this with a few different kinds of clay, three. The first one I'm going to start with is polymer clay. Polymer clay for me is by far the easiest to do. It's just easier for me to work with polymer clay than anything else. It's just so easy to work with. I'm using Premo clay because it's a little bit harder than souffle or other things, and it's really strong. Premo, there's others that are harder like Kato clay that might be good too, but Premo is just what I happen to get. Okay, so roll it out into like a snake that's like big on one side and small on the other. And if you're using polymer clay, you have to keep in mind that polymer clay is kind of flexible when it's cooked, and if it's very thin, it's going to be more flexible. So if you have this really long and thin, it's going to be kind of bendy, and you don't want a bendy unicorn horn. So that's one of the disadvantages of the polymer clay, is that it has a little bit of bend to it. But it is very strong in the end. You know, the flexibility of it makes it, you could drop it and it's still not going to break unless you throw it on the ground. Even then, I don't know if it would. But yeah, so you make it into this shape and then you kind of flatten it a little bit. So as you can see, I'm just kind of smoothing it out, getting any air bubbles out, and any lint or anything that the white has picked up. By the way, when you do work with white, make sure everything's really clean. I made sure things were pretty clean, but I still had lint because I didn't do a super good job at it. But yeah, so you flatten it out a little bit and then you just start twisting, and really that is how you get the look of the unicorn horn. It's really that easy, no carving necessary. So I've tried to do this with a core, having like a wooden dowel core or even a tinfoil core, and the clay just doesn't wrap around the core very well. And you can't twist, and twisting is the easiest way. Carving, it's just really a lot harder to get a unicorn twist that looks natural with carving. Now I'm making this one really twisted. I actually kind of like the look of it better a little bit when it's not quite as twisted. But remember that this is a mythical creature, so it doesn't have to be, you can make up whether you want it to be really twisted or less twisted. And we want to try to make it realistic, so don't be too perfect in it. You don't want it to look cartoony perfect. You want it to look realistic, and realistic animal horns have flaws to them and have bends and dents and things like that. Okay, so here is an antler, and I decided to do the bottom like an antler. I don't know a lot about biology and things about animals with horns, but I just went with an antler end. And if you want to kind of dream up an animal that you think that a horn for a unicorn horn would look more like, then go ahead and just look up the pictures of those kinds of animals and make the bottom of it more like that. Look, I'm kind of making it a little longer by stretching it and unstretching it here again. For instance, one second here. So this is a picture of a narwhal tusk, and back in the day they used to actually trade and sell these as unicorn horns. Kind of a scam that they had, I guess, or I don't know. Some people really thought they were unicorn horns when they found them, but they're narwhal tooths, is that what they really are? And these gazelle horns are hollow, so both of those are hollow, so you could go with something hollow, but I just didn't know exactly how I was going to make it hollow. You could also make it just look chipped off, or something like if you found a piece of a dinosaur horn, it would look like it was chipped or broken off or sawed off. So it could just be a straight end that's kind of jaggedy. But I'm going with the antler style look here. So I just kind of looked at the antler, and it's kind of got these little holy kind of middle of a bone type looks to the end of it. So I'm making that kind of stick out roundish like that one does. And then it's just got these nodules that go around it. So this isn't that hard to do, and you don't have to worry about it making it look exactly like an antler, because like I said, this is a new animal no one's seen, so who knows what it really looks like. You can make it up. You just don't want it to look too much like hand carved. You want it to look like it came out of an animal, but it doesn't have to look really specifically like anything. So if it's not perfect, don't even worry about it. Perfection is overrated is what I always say to my kids. All right, so I'm just kind of cutting into these sides and kind of playing it with my finger. I also have, as you can see here on the right, this little tool that's got a little bit of a silicone end. You can find these silicone tools or these little poker tools that I'm using to carve with in the art supply store, in the ceramics carving section or places like that. Or you could just use something around your house. Just look around for something that you can use to move clay around that's when your hands are just like too big to get into spaces. Maybe a pencil, the end of a paintbrush, a big fat needle, or anything that you can see around your house that might work would be great too if you don't want to go out and buy something. So I just keep using these tools in my hands to just kind of make it so that the nodules and stuff are kind of smooth, and I kind of smooth out the unicorn horn bits that have been bumped or whatever as I'm working on the end. You could alternatively cook it, then go back and use some liquid polymer clay to attach a new piece of clay after it's been cooked. You can always do that too. Or you can just do it all at once like this and just kind of fix the ends of it before you start again. So then I take this little metal brush and I poke it. It's easier than using a million pokes with a needle, and you kind of got that texture there. And I put it on some cornstarch, a cornstarch bed, so that it doesn't have a flat or shiny look when you set it on the cookie sheet. Put it in the oven for the amount the package asks for, and then you're done. You can quench it, clean it off when you're done, straight with water, and paint immediately. That's one thing I love about the polymer clay is you can work with it immediately. So that one's done, and I am working with clay. I actually thought that I had, what is it called, cold porcelain clay, but I had it in a bag that wasn't labeled and that I hadn't used in a while, and it isn't. This is what I think is a high quality paper clay, probably DAS brand, D-A-S, or DAP. Yeah, DAS, I think. Anyway, it's a high quality paper clay, and it feels a lot like working with like the ceramics like you would have done in school, or like any other air dry clay. It's an air dry clay, and I'm working with this in a room that has like 7 or 8 industrial fans going right now because we had a flood, and there's also a moisturizing, what is it called? Takes up the moisture, a big one of those. So it's really dry in that room. So I'm using a lot of water and trying to work really fast, but you might work in a place where it's humid, and so maybe you don't have to work as fast or use as much water, but I had to do that, and you get to get little pieces and just fix them like that. So this kind of clay had a lot of dimpling when I twisted it. And at first I thought that I didn't like it, but by the time that I was painting it, I really actually liked the dimpling. It made it feel more realistic, more like real bone. In the end, I felt like this kind of clay looked more like real bone than the polymer clay did, and also the cold porcelain, which is the other clay I'll show you in a second. And I basically just did all the same things with this, but it's hard to show what it feels like, but working with this clay just feels so different. It dries faster. You have to keep your hands wet. You smooth things out with water because you can't just leave it there and come back to it. It just feels so different to work with. So if you have worked with this kind of clay and prefer it and you're used to it, then maybe start with this clay. Maybe that's better for you. Also, this paper clay dries pretty quickly and dries pretty thoroughly. At the time, I thought I was working with cold porcelain, and that stuff, when it's this thick, takes a long time to dry. So I ended up poking some holes in it, as you can see right here, to help it dry. But it dried in like 2 days all the way through really well. It is the most fragile of the 3, though. It's definitely the most fragile. But it has the advantage of drying relatively quickly and looking really realistic. When you're all done with this and you're letting it dry, just put it on a bed of the cornstarch to let it dry and make sure that it's really straight so you don't have a bendy unicorn. So this is the polymer, not the polymer, this is the cold porcelain clay, and it is really fun to work with. It feels like taffy. It's like glue. It's basically glue and cornstarch mixed together, and you can make your own for super cheap. But I've never been very successful at it, so I just buy it from Walmart. It's polyform cold porcelain air dry clay, and it is so fun to work with. It does take a long time to dry when you have a thick piece, but when you have a thin piece, it doesn't take that long. It's just that it kind of has it doesn't breathe very well. So you need, this is the one that you really do need to poke the holes in. I don't think I needed to poke the holes in that paper clay. It probably wasn't necessary because it's a breathable clay and it will dry all to the core. This one I did need to poke the holes into. And this is so strong when it's dry, this kind of clay, that you can make it much longer without a core. Much longer, much skinnier. And I did try to make it as skinny as I could just so that it could dry easier. I put it on my cornstarch bed, make sure that it's not too bendy. I did actually end up putting the end up a little too high and it ended up a little bit bendy. But if you just set it down, it might have a tendency to just like sink like dough would and have a flat end. So I'm poking holes in it to help it dry to the inside. But this honestly took over a week to dry. And even then I had to poke a couple holes. And I had a pretty dry house. I live in a desert too, so like it takes a while to dry when it's thick. You definitely want to poke the holes into it. Then when you're done, after you've let it dry for a while, you go back. Oh, this is the polymer clay one. You go back and you just sand any imperfections off that you don't like. Doesn't have to be perfect, but just sand anything you don't want off. And for the ones that do have the holes, you're going to have to get some clay and fill in those holes and smooth it out. Just get a little bit of a water near you again. And I'm sorry for this very bad filming here. I didn't realize my phone holder was showing. But you just get a little bit of water and put it on the dry clay to kind of activate it. Get some fresh clay and smooth it on until there's no seam with a wet finger. And that'll just cover it up. And for both clays, this dried overnight just wonderfully. You don't have to wait a whole week for a thin covering like this. So once you're done with that, then we get to paint. And this part is really fun. You might want to do some sort of base paint over the clay ones. For the polymer clay, I just go straight to using like a varnish mixed with brown. I did black here too, but I regret using the black. It was a little too gray looking. I like a really dark brown mixed with a varnish, or you can just buy what's called antiquing medium in the acrylic paint section. I usually have that on hand, but I didn't, so I'm just making my own with brown acrylic paint. You mix it, you paint it on, and then you wipe it off the tops so it's kind of left into the edges. Then after that's all dried, then I go back over with this iridescent medium. And this is from the Liquitex brand. You could use like some clear paint mixed with shimmer powder or something. Or you could just skip this altogether. If you feel like unicorns didn't have shimmer to their horns, then just skip this altogether. It just depends on what you imagine your unicorn to look like. I imagine it looking shimmery. So that's what I did. I have all three of them set out here so that you can see how they all look together. The top one is the polymer clay. The second one in the middle that I'm painting now is the air dry paper clay. And the bottom one is the, what is it called? The porcelain clay, the polyform porcelain clay, air dry. And I think that the middle one that I'm painting now is the most fragile. The one on the top and the one on the bottom are both very strong, and the two air dry clays are both more realistic feeling, both more like really stiff, whereas the top one of the polymer clay is a little more flexible. So that's the advantage of that. Also the polymer clay one is just instant gratification. You put it in the oven, it's done. It's the easiest to work with. So there's just plus and minuses to each of them. So maybe you look at those and decide which is most important to you. I think in the end, I love the way that the one with the cold porcelain clay looks. You can do them longer, you can do them skinnier. They're just very strong, and they have sort of a translucence look to them that I really dig. Also, I was thinking about this, how I was doing this, and you really probably should, and I should have done it this way, done the shimmer, if you're gonna do shimmer, anyway, do the shimmer first and then do the antiquing, because why would the antiquing be shimmery? I don't know why I did it this way, but maybe shimmer first and then seal it and then do the antiquing, because if you go back and you wipe off with a wet paper towel or wet wipe, then you're going to just rub off the shimmer. So you need to seal it after. Shimmer, seal, then antiquing. That's probably why I did it the opposite way, but honestly, I kind of wish I would have done it the other way. Or I also just like it without the shimmer. I'm just rambling now. But after all this is done, you do need to seal it with a spray sealer, or it doesn't have to be spray sealer, but some sort of matte spray. Shiny is just going to make it look faker. Get a matte. And I really like a matte varnish called, let me find it, Crystal Coat, K-O-T-E, matte varnish. I think it's from Australia. You have to buy it online. Hellman is the brand. And it's great for polymer clay because a lot of sealers make it sticky. Also, there's Preserve Your Memories spray, matte spray. That's good for polymer clay. But for the air dry clays, really any sort of spray matte varnish will work fine. And that's the end of the tutorial. I really hope that you try to make this. It's really fun. If you want to display it somewhere, I think it might be fun to like put a tag on it that says specimen number something from lab something. Or you could put it in like a box, like a wooden box for display, or under glass. You could put it in like a shadow box and hang it on the wall under like with like a velvet backing or something. Or you could actually use it as an actual wand. It would be really cool as a wand. Feel really substantial and stuff. I do have some unicorn style wands that are like 10 times easier to make that I'll show you how to do eventually with the hot glue. If you want just a unicorn wand. And hopefully I'll do that soon. One thing I do with the unicorn wands is instead of antiquing it with brown, on some of them I antique it like down the shaft with rainbow. So it's subtly rainbow, very subtly, like kind of grungy rainbow. Or you could do it in black unicorn horns. And if you want it to be really twisty, instead of just having a really smooth shaft, you could put lines down it before you start twisting. And then it would look like a twisted piece of bark or something like that. So many different options. Use your imagination. Think about what you would imagine a unicorn horn to be like, and just make it happen. Don't worry about perfection, and that's my advice to you. That's all. I hope that you have a fun time making it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.